I stood in the hotel room, looking out the window towards the back of another building. I'd written something that I was reasonably pleased with. I didn't really know what it meant or what use it had. I suppose more or less it was just a paragraph like any other. I sat at the end of the bed, feeling my feet on the carpet. I thought that I was going to write more, but I just sat there for another 40 minutes or so, senselessly plucking stray hairs from my nose. If someone were to walk into the room at that moment and ask me what I was doing, I would tell them I was writing, even though all I was really doing was merely sitting near an open word processor. Maybe it counted as writing, maybe it didn't. Once I decided that I was done and was going to go for a walk, I ended up typing another few paragraphs. I decided to let what I'd written rest before reading it over. Instead, I would go downstairs and wait for Nora to arrive. She was coming to meet me for lunch. I put on my socks and changed my shirt. I drank the coffee that was left from the morning. Before I left, I found myself back at the computer, rewriting the paragraphs from the present tense to the past tense, thinking that it would somehow strengthen them. I looked back at the original paragraphs, but I couldn't tell which were better. My chair faced the hotel lobby. I wanted to order a coffee, but the waitress was busy with another table. A man stood at the front desk. He looked to be a few years younger than I was. He had 2 children, a daughter and a son. They ran across the lobby. Their mother chased after them, trying to get them to settle. She looked up in my direction for a moment before her son pushed over one of their suitcases. It hit against the ground and banged loudly. The boy looked frightened. His sister laughed. The man scolded her. The way he said his daughter's name caused her posture to straighten immediately. The boy took a step to hide behind his mother, who quietly guided him and his sister to a couch near the window. They stood quietly and waited for their dad. The waitress arrived with a pot of coffee. She spoke in a sentimental tone. "Yes, sure, I'll have some coffee," I said. There was a NASCAR race on the TV. The cars sped through a little town. It reminded me of how we used to push Nora in her stroller, zooming through the park when she was less than a year old. I remembered dressing her into her neon fleece onesie, texting her mom to ask if it would be warm enough. She said that it might be too warm, but to unzip it if she felt hot. I carried Nora outside and showed her how to press the button to open the garage door. She smiled when she felt it click. We went to the park. There were worms poking their heads through the mud. People played tennis and walked their dogs. When Nora got fussy, I gave her a bottle. She became quiet. Every so often I passed someone who looked at her and smiled. Sometimes they'd want to slow down to say hello to the baby, but instead I would just try to return the smile and keep going along. I remember being in a grocery store around that time. We went to pick up some things for Miriam's mom for Shabbat: salmon, parsley, split peas and carrots, eggs, breadcrumbs. An old man in the aisle told us how fast Nora would grow up, how soon she would be driving her own car. Miriam said that soon she would be speeding in a Bronco down a highway in California. The old man laughed. It was still raining on the way out. I pushed Nora's stroller with one hand and held her shopping bags with the other. There was a shopping cart blocking the exit. I kicked it out of the way, causing a box of Kedem grape juice to fall off the cart. A guy rushed over from the parking lot to help, thinking that I'd accidentally dropped the grape juice and that I hadn't deliberately kicked it out of the way. I told him it was all right. He looked confused. Another man came running out of his minivan, claiming the grape juice was his. I kept walking, trying to get Nora back to the car before she got wet from the rain. I looked over the menu, but became bored, so I put it back down, aligning it with the container that the sweeteners were in. The man from the lobby returned, this time without his family. I noticed that he looked like my dad in a way, but then, on seeing the side of his face, I realized he looked more like me. He was taller, his face was more full, he was clean-shaven in a way that seemed completely alien to me. Somehow, I had the sense that he was living the kind of life that I always thought I was supposed to have. He ordered a bottle of beer from the waitress. He looked up at the TV screen. He noticed me looking at him. He said something, but I didn't quite understand what he said. I responded, telling him that I was there to meet my daughter. He said something about the hockey game, and I agreed. He nodded back in a way that I felt like I had said something that wasn't ordinary. He looked back up at the TV, and I went onto my phone. Eventually, he left the hotel. He stood on the street. He walked to the hotel parking lot, to the minivan he'd rented from the airport. He looked at it, inspecting it for any damage. There was a small scuff on the door, but rubbed off easily. The clouds moved and the sun reflected off of the car. He squinted and looked upward. He walked to the stairwell and upward to the second floor. He looked down at the roof of the van, trying to see its condition, but it was too far away. He used the camera on his phone to zoom in on it, but the glare caused it to blur. His wife called. She said the kids were hungry. He said he'd be right up. She asked what he was doing. He said that he was just checking in on the rental van. He tried to get back into the hotel from the stairwell, but the door wouldn't open. He rubbed the key card on his pant leg and tried it again, but it didn't make a difference. He tried to find a restaurant on the way back around to the hotel. It didn't look like there were any nearby. He spoke to the woman at the front desk, trying to be more polite than he had been when he checked in. He asked her if she could recommend any family restaurants in the area. She suggested the hotel restaurant. He asked about his key card, if it was meant to open the stairwell from the parking lot. She took the key card and typed something into the computer. She said that it should work and handed it back to him. On the way back to the elevator, he saw a girl enter the lobby. He noticed that she looked similar to the man he briefly spoke to in the restaurant. The man did say he was waiting there to meet his daughter for lunch.